Welcome to episode 167 of Stageworthy. I'm your host, Phil Rickaby. Stageworthy is a podcast about people in Canadian theatre featuring conversations with actors, directors, playwrights, and more. I want to thank you for listening to this episode. As I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, it's been 3 years of doing this podcast, and it's been slowly growing, and I wanted to thank you for listening. I really appreciate the fact that you've come. Whether this is the first episode that you've heard, or whether it is one of many that you've heard. If this is your first time, or if you've been listening online, you can subscribe to receive this podcast directly to your mobile device every Tuesday when it's released. And you can do that by going to Apple Podcasts on your phone, or Google Music, or Google Podcasts if you happen to have one of those, a phone with that on it, and search for Stageworthy and just click on the handy subscribe button, and then you will get this podcast delivered to you every week. If you feel like dropping me a line after you do that, you know what? I would love to hear that you just subscribed. That would make my day if you just subscribe to the podcast after listening for a couple of episodes, or if this is your first time, if you've subscribed, drop me a line on social. You can find Stageworthy on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at StageworthyPod, and you can find the website at stageworthypodcast.com. And if you wanted to drop me a line directly, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Phil Rickaby, and my website is philrickaby.com. My guest this week is Kate Ross, who appears in Mary's Wedding, starting January 31st at the Streetcar Crow's Nest in Toronto. So what is Mary's Wedding about?
So it's a love story set in World War I. Basically, it starts with the play is actually narrated by Mary, and it's the night before her wedding.
Okay.
And she's talking about these dreams that she has, and the dreams are of her love, like the story of her soulmate, essentially. And they're tied into World War I.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it like from the beginning of their relationship through him going off to war?
It is.
Or,
yeah. And it seems, I mean, I don't think it's actually said in the play, but it seems that they haven't known each other for very long when he goes to war, but that their connection is very intense.
That would not be uncommon for World War I.
Yeah.
Especially considering there were a lot of men who were quite young, boys even.
Yeah.
I heard a story once where this guy was 16 and he went to the recruiting station.
Yeah.
And he walks up and said, "How old are you?" He said, 16. He said, "Take a walk around the park and be older when you come back."
Yeah, I think I've heard something.
And literally he walks around the park and comes back. "How old are you?" 18. There
Excellent. Come on down. Yeah.
So insane.
I know. And it's so sad and sweet. And I mean, I also get the sense that she's a little bit younger than him, but it's just like that, like first spark romance, that connection. And then that cloud of World War I that's so kind of satisfying in those World War stories. You know, there's something so satisfying about that creeping in because, you know, people are so fascinated by the war, but it's so tragic.
I mean, everything about that war, it's one of the, everything about that war is so tragic to me, is the youth that were lost, the idea that like how we fight, you're just going to run towards those machine guns.
I know. And as you say, they were so young. Whereas I feel like World War II, of course, the soldier part is tragic, but it's a civilians war. It's the tragedy is the civilians.
Yeah.
Whereas in World War I, the tragedy is the soldiers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Very much so. And is this your first encounter with Mary's Wedding? Because I know that it's been done a few times before.
Yeah, it's very popular regionally. It's been done forever. In the 15 or so years since it was written. But my husband and I, Fraser Elston, and we're the cast of this production. But we produced it ourselves about 6 years ago. And much of the play takes place in a barn. They first meet in a barn when they're hiding from a rainstorm. And we did it in a barn in Essex County near Windsor. So we had a team, and we went. Fraser Sisters and Minister. Her congregation was there, and she asked if anybody had a barn. And a couple were like, "We got a barn." So we turned it into a little theater.
Wow.
Yeah, wow. And we produced it there.
So what was it that drew you to the play originally?
I think it was, I'm a sucker for a love story. Like, I really am. Like, I saw Titanic when I was 10, and I watch it like once a year.
Yeah.
You know, it was like I'm a real sucker for a love story. I'm a real sucker for period stories. And my grandmother was a nurse in a casualty clearing station in World War II.
Okay.
And I grew up hearing all about the war from her perspective. So I've always had that kind of, for lack of a better word, like patriotism when it comes to the world wars. Yeah.
Now you're approaching it for the second time.
Yes.
What did you learn the first time from the play that you're sort of like taking into this second shot at it?
Oh. I think more than anything, it's just having that first run at it, and acting with Frey in a public place or in a professional setting. And we're producing it ourselves. And there were just so many things going on that I feel, if anything, paying attention to the storytelling and the text and the characters, and just having that more precious time to work on that rather than all the fray of what we had before.
Sure.
Yeah. So I feel like it's kind of more simple this time for us because we're not producing it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot that goes into self-producing. So it is super hard to be a performer and producer at the same time.
It is.
Because you feel like you can't concentrate on one in particular. So one of them often suffers.
Yeah, and I think the acting was good last time, but I think that it was just a little more panicked. And this time, even now, I'm going back over the script and remembering my choices from last time, being like, I wonder where I was at when I made that choice. Because I am approaching it so differently this time, just from being older and a little bit more confident. And
well, it's so interesting how your people would think if you played that role before that you're just going to do the same thing.
Yeah.
But you approach it in such a different way because you're not the same person you were the first time.
Yeah, it's very true.
Yeah.
There's this story that always my friends tease me about how much this breaks my heart, but Kate Winslet talks about how when she watches Titanic now, like with the anniversary of that movie, she finds all of her choices so horrifying. and I, of course, when I heard that interview, I was like, what do you mean there was only one way to be? But it sounds silly, but reading over now, I'm like, I get that. Just honestly, it's time passing can do that.
When you're reading it now, are you remembering those choices?
Yeah, definitely. I can hear myself. Like I can hear exactly how I said those lines. Yeah. For sure.
Do you find it difficult because you had that in your body, that delivery, that now your instinct is still to follow that, or are you able to separate enough from that?
You know, I think if you had asked me that a few weeks ago, I would have assumed that would be very difficult to separate myself, but I'm finding it a pleasant surprise how easy it is to come at it from a refreshed perspective. Nice. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
So I do see places where I can play with it and see little nuggets I didn't see before. Yeah.
So as a sucker for a love story.
Yes.
And you know, we've mentioned Titanic a few times. And Titanic is a sort of a tragic love story. It doesn't, even though, you know, we could say there was actually more than enough room on that stupid door. But, you know, we don't have to go. That's a long-standing.
That's a whole other episode.
But is this one? Are you drawn to this story? Is it also a tragic love story, or is it? Is the tragedy their separation? What is it? Even more so than just being a sucker for a love story. What is it about this story and their relationship that's special for you?
I think it's, that's a good question. I don't want to give too much away in terms of it being tragic. I think the thing about war and youth and love, all these big themes, is that these kids are being forced to grow up very quickly and deal with things that we now associate with being so much older.
Yeah.
But at the time, you know, you had these 16, 17, 18-year-olds dealing with these huge themes. And there's something about that I find so interesting and sad, that push to grow up before your time. And that's both the beautiful thing about falling in love, where you're you make this connection to somebody and you suddenly become an adult in a lot of ways, you know, or you're having to deal with these things depending on what age you are, these adult themes. But then there's this other layer of war and death. And so all of those I just find incredibly interesting and evocative and reminding me of growing up in a much simpler time, obviously, because there was no war, but just that first love and becoming an adult so quickly.
Well, there's also, I mean, with this, if the idea is that these two meet and they don't know each other very long before they get married, and he goes off to war,
right? He
goes off to war, and neither of them knows if he's coming back.
Well, exactly, yeah.
So.
And she's suddenly a war bride or a war, not quite a war widow, but in that position where she could be. And you're kind of, you know, you can't go on about your day. You can't fall in love with anybody else, or you wouldn't. You're living over in Europe. Yeah. She would be living over in Europe as well mentally. So it's just a life for him is so intense, and he needs to focus on survival. And life for her is so intense because she's not really able to live it while he's gone. Yeah. Her whole world would be over there. Yeah. Yeah.
What's the most difficult thing about putting your mind into the early 1900s?
I think luckily her character's she's pretty feisty for the time.
Okay, good.
In my experience, I often get period roles. I've heard I have a face from long ago, so I tend to get typecast into those roles. And I find not being able to be outspoken as a woman or give your opinion readily. However, in this case, I mean, she's pretty feisty, which I like. But generally just putting your mind in that place and being like, no, just tell him to stay, tell him we're stupid and he can't, you know, that I think that struggle is hard to find. And you really have to focus on what the values were then. And really, she'd never tell him not to go in a serious way. She'd never give him an ultimatum. Because that just wasn't the time.
No.
You know?
And in fact, there is not a single person who went to the war in that, especially early on, who thought that they'd be gone for very long. They thought they'd be back by Christmas, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And they didn't think it would be that bad.
No.
They just never thought, they couldn't imagine the things they would find over there.
You couldn't, because war was, from the time the war started to the time it ended, war technology changed so fast.
Machine guns, mustard gas, that all came about during World War I.
You went from people anticipating that they would be lining up with their rifles and marching towards each other to digging trenches and running into machine gun fire and all of that stuff.
Yeah, and I find, like, there's a part in the play, because how it's set up is she imagines what his life is like over there, and she steps into it and sort of is observing what it's like for him, as well as becoming his closest confidant, who's his sergeant, who was a real man, Sergeant Gordon Flowerdew. And there is a scene where they're talking about the mustard gas and seeing for the first time this strange yellow cloud before any news of this even existing. You know, so to imagine what that must be like to see that in the distance and then have the physical reaction they had and not having any idea what was happening. Like for us, we can look back and be like, oh, mustard gas. Like,
no, of course.
No idea.
No. It would have just been like a fog or something.
Yeah, and they're like, oh, that's weird. And then who made that? Is that a weapon? Is that a weird weather thing? Like, you know, they wouldn't know.
No, it's just crazy.
Yeah.
Now, to jump back a little bit, one of the things I always like to talk about is your theater origin story.
Okay.
And so I'm curious about what it was that drew you to theater in the first place.
I've always been a bit of a ham, more so when I was a child, I think. My parents are both in the film industry.
Okay.
My mom's a film producer. My dad's a writer and a director. And we were always a family of artists and we'd watch movies. My parents would take me to shows. I got into ballet from a young age and did the Nutcracker every year.
Okay.
And then in grade 6, we did Midsummer Night's Dream, the abridged version. And I got to play Titania.
Okay.
And it just sort of snowballed from there. But I always loved dressing up. I had a really vivid imagination. I liked being the center of attention, like all these kind of classic things. Yeah.
Midsummer Night's Dream, that was the first of the classics and the things like that. But from there, I'm sure there were other people in that show, in that little abridged version, who didn't go on to become actors. So what was it? I mean, aside from liking being the center of attention, at a certain point you make the decision that this is what you want to do. Do you remember what that turning point for you was?
I think it was actually before that. Before it wasn't theater related, but I did some film when I was a kid. And I thought the idea of a job being dressing up in a period costume, all these adults around me on a set that's built to look as close to the time as possible, and everybody there is being paid to play. Yeah. And I think that's often lost in, I think that's something theater has tries to keep all the time. And often with TV and film that gets lost because there's so much money at stake. Yeah. But at the end of the day, we're all there to convince people of a story, which is such a unique thing. And so I think, being able to be on set and really put myself in that world was from a young age, when I was probably 9 or 10, was that the beginning of that. Yeah. And realizing this could be a job. I could do this every day. And
it's interesting because you had more exposure than most people I speak to early on. Yeah. It is potentially a job. Yeah. And your parents were working in that industry. So it's an option. Was there ever any doubt that this is what you would do?
No.
No? Okay.
No, I never wanted to be anything else. I'd say, I guess I would want to be more of a writer or more of a theater actress or more of a film and TV actress. That would waver a little bit, but never the realm of where I wanted to be. Yeah.
Did you ever find that you'd made a decision as to which one you were going to do?
No, I've been able to sort of waffle, And I don't know if it's a helpful thing or not, but I've often had people around me who create opportunities, my agents, that sort of thing, who have said, right now you're doing well in this realm, so let's push you a bit in this direction. And so I've kind of gone where the work has been for the most part. Yeah. Yeah.
I think it is an advantage that we have in Canada that people do go between those two worlds, film and television, a little more than sometimes happens in the States.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Did you go to theater school? Did you?
I did. I went to George Brown. Yeah.
Nice. When were you at George Brown? Which campus were you?
I was Young Center.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess it's been 10 years since we were in second year, I want to say. It's been a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you started, were you at Casa Loma, or were you...
No, at Young Center. I was year 2 or 3 of Young Center.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I was the old River Street warehouse.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
We used to hear great party stories about you guys after shows.
I'm sure that everybody heard
all kinds of things.
Stories. I mean, there were students that I knew that had a key.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
The school.
Yes,
and so
I've heard of this.
There were things.
Oh, such good times. I mean, even now I think back, I guess that's always the thing, right? It's when I was in George Brown, we would, work on our vocal masks until 2 a.m, drinking beer in the studios, and who knows.
I don't remember, the thing I remember about vocal mask was spending Saturday and Sunday at the Metro Reference Library.
Oh my God, I know. Looking for any book that had the word.
I know. And you know what? We didn't even have, was there even a computer? No, because I would sit down and Peter Wilde, who was the head of acting, he would just name off all these books. You must look at these books.
These will help you.
These books. Somehow he'd pull, you tell him his topic and he'd give you this list of books. You'd be like, where do I find these?
Yeah.
And he'd just be sitting there how do I read all of this? And you start like skimming through, and that's like the whole weekend.
That's a whole weekend. And also, it's kind of, there was an unfairness to it because we had a bunch of people in our class who had gone to university and gotten full degrees before they came. Like, they were like research wizards.
Oh, sure.
So they go to the reference library, you'd go in a group and they'd be like, see you guys. And they'd like, you know, go and get settled and be flipping through. And you'd just be standing, literally walking up to rows of books and kind of loosely reading. Being like, does that say heat? Like heat, you know, okay, looking around.
Well, there's also the difficulty that I don't know about when you were doing your first vocal mask, when nobody said what it was, really. So there's a whole lot of debate about what is it. Although Peter had said the first time he mentioned it what it was, but we all missed it. Right. You know,
Jimmy Simon used to say it was a pastiche. That was his word. Not that helpful because we had never heard that word before. No. But I mean, he had a little descriptor and.
Peter used to say it's a 5-minute entertainment, but he said it the first time, and then he never mentioned it again. So there's so much like hand wringing about like what is the vocal mask?
What is entertainment?
I don't even know. You know, all this. What was your first vocal mask topic?
Oh my God, I don't think I can remember. I don't think this is so terrible because the first one I was so terrified I thought I was going to faint. The third one was crap, like utter garbage. And in third year, people started to drop away. Like we would all be working on them. And then like a week before, people started canceling, saying they were no longer doing vocal mask because we started to get the option in third year.
Oh shit, really? Okay.
And I held on out of guilt, but I couldn't tell you what that was. However, Fraser, who is in Mary's Wedding with me and now my husband, we, as friends, did vocal mask in second year, and our topic was heat.
Okay, nice.
So, which a lot of people roll their eyes at now because there wasn't much wonder as to whether or not we would get together. Yeah. No, I really don't remember. I'd have to go back and look at my files, my neatly kept
Did
files.
you keep them?
Oh yeah.
Oh my God.
I have them somewhere.
I got rid of mine as quickly as possible.
I know. I wish I had. I come upon that stuff sometimes, old monologues or scenes you just got torn apart for and you're like, I never want to read that again.
Yeah. I mean, I just remember so many times like torturing myself in theater school. I mean, it's the thing that we do, right? Because we're trying to impress everybody. And so you're working so hard.
I know.
And making yourself kind of miserable in a lot of ways.
Oh man, I often wish that I could go back. I mean, it's like any school. I feel the same with high school. But that I could go back now having known what it was. I think I would have gotten so much more out of theater school.
I agree.
You
I
know?
agree. I know there have been so many times when I've thought to myself, if I could go back knowing what I know now.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you can. Because, I mean, there were times when Peter would say, you know, you're not going to understand what I'm trying to teach you now. One day, though, it's going to drop, and you're going to be like, oh, that's what it is. Yeah. And it's happened so many times, and in those moments, I was like, that's what he's trying to... But why couldn't he just
say the words?
Just say it, you know?
Yeah. And I think that we're all so afraid of screwing up, as you say, and you just want to impress people. My big issue is that I think I didn't take as many risks as I would now, or you know, I just wouldn't have been I would be more goofy now. I would try more things. I'd fall on my face a bit more because that's the weird thing about theater school is you're trying to not get kicked out.
Well, that's the thing,
you know,
is when you are faced with the possibility of not continuing, that like you could be there for one semester and then at Christmas they could say, sorry.
Yeah.
You know, and then you pack up and you leave.
Yeah.
You don't take risks.
Of course not. That's the strange thing. And I understand the kicking out process and bringing in a lot of people because of the college aspect. Like, I get all that. But I just think it's a strange beast where you're asking people to be free and really find themselves for the first time, especially the really young people. But it also has to be something we like or we're going to kick you out.
Well, that's the thing.
So weird.
It's like, I've sort of like go between, I'm not sure if I think that you do need to kick people out. I suspect people will self-regulate.
Yeah.
And that the program, some people will realize that the program's not for them and they'll leave.
Which happens anyway,
And also I've often wondered, like, when you're asking people to leave, is it because you are not seeing a future for them? If so, how dare you?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I feel that way about people not being showcased.
Yeah.
And I was lucky to get a couple good parts at school, but I think it is absurd that we're all paying the same amount for tuition. We're all working our asses off.
Yeah.
And you're going to showcase some people and not others.
Yeah.
Because you're of the opinion once they get in the real world, they might not work.
Yeah.
Because frankly, often the faculty is not correct.
No, I know a bunch of people, like, there's really very few people that I was in theater school with who are still doing theater.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So, how old were you? Like, were you really young when you went into George Brown?
Yeah.
Were you one of the super young ones?
Well, I was like 20.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was on the younger end, but I wasn't 17.
No, I was 18. And
oh my God.
Which now feels so insane to have gone in there
straight out of
high school and not had any time between.
Where'd you go? You were at George Brown.
Yeah, I was at George Brown.
And are you from here?
Around. I grew up in Belleville, Ajax.
Oh,
that
okay.
Sort of thing. So
okay.
I'm like around the Toronto area.
Right.
Yeah.
So you had support in the area?
Yeah.
Like your family and people?
Yeah, there were people.
Yeah. Because there were some people, I mean, one of my closest friends from theater school, she was 17 from Calgary, living here alone. It's wild.
One of the guys who was in my class, he wasn't there on the first day. He showed up on the second day because apparently somebody didn't show up. They called him and said,
God.
"You have a spot. Okay, if you can be here tomorrow."
Oh my God.
And so he shows up the next day and he spends a week staying at the Salvation Army because he didn't have a place to live. And like, but like, that's how keen he was to get into the school. And,
yeah. Wow. Wow. Is he still in theater?
No. No. He's one of the ones, he blames George Brown for that. You know, he's like one of the, I mean, the program is not for everyone.
No.
Right?
No.
And, you know, there are some people take to it and some people don't. And some people, like I hung on with my nails.
Yeah.
Every time.
I was always on probation.
Yeah.
After the first semester, from then on, I was on probation until I graduated.
100%. And that is a stressful place to be.
Yeah. Like, by third year, you're sort of like, here I am.
To be, and I found that because I knew I had just scraped by, like somehow I had managed to convince them to let me stay in.
Yeah.
That I spent all that time even in more fear.
Yeah.
In class.
Yeah.
Like really hamstrung and having a difficult time to move forward.
Of course.
You know? Yeah.
Well, because you'd also be looking for the thing that is keeping you there, because they don't say specifically why. Well, maybe they did for you. For me, it's just sort of a general wash of like, we just don't know. And I was like, right, okay. So you start looking for the thing that will keep you. What is the thing that isn't perfect that is keeping you on probation, sort of thing?
Yeah.
You never know what that is.
No, you don't. It'd be so much easier if they would just come out and tell you. You know, what's the thing? Like, first off, why did you think maybe not?
Yeah.
And also,
why am I
still here? What did I do that convinced you to let me stay?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So much. Yeah. Yeah.
Weird thing.
Yeah. Was it? I mean, having not been at the Young Center, I'm always curious about what it's like in that building. Is it completely segregated from the Soul Pepper aspect? Or is it, do you have any crossover with the Soul Pepper people at all?
I can't speak to it now.
Yeah.
I don't know what the deal is now. When we were there my first year, I don't know, either the Soul Pepper Academy didn't exist yet, or it wasn't quite as part, like in the Young Center as it is now.
Yeah.
But at the time, we would see all the shows at Soul Pepper. Yeah. We share the atrium, so we'd all go for lunch and you know, dare each other to go talk to Oliver Dennis and be like, or go and compliment them on their latest performances, because they really were our celebrities at the time, I think, and you're seeing everything, but more than that, not so much. And we do use their theaters in third year and for the kids show in second year we did, so. In that way, there was a bit. And we also had a few Soul Pepper members come and talk to us at business of acting class. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So in that way, there was a bit of crossover. It's pretty inspiring, though, being in that building with them, I would say, because I had gone to a lot of theater, but I didn't know that world, that Canadian theater right in their world until school. And you get so engrossed in it when you're in theater school. So it's a nice place for that. Yeah.
Now, you mentioned that you were your husband, your now husband, was a classmate of yours.
He was.
And you said that, was it when you did your vocal mess together that people started to say, or was there something before that?
Oh, what is the timeline? It's foggy. We were like best friends we became very, very close by the end of first year, and we were both in other relationships. And it wasn't until like close to the end of second year that we actually got together. Okay. So not long after vocal mess. Okay. Yeah. And I don't know what people thought. I think our close friends were like, you guys spend an awful lot of time together. Not appropriate. But we tried to keep it a secret for about a month.
Oh, really?
Within the class. But we weren't really fooling.
Was there a reason why you tried to keep it a secret in the class?
I don't know. I'm sure at the time we were like, we don't want to taint this perfect artistic group, and we're so close. And I'm sure it was something stupid like that. But I think really we wanted the drama. Oh,
sure. I mean, when you're at a certain age, you're like, you need the drama, right?
Yeah. And we're like, we're all going to Balzac's to grab a coffee. Anyone want to come? No? Okay, bye. Oh, that sort of thing, which is all very exciting.
Yes. Yeah. Now you've worked with your husband a few times, not just in theater school, but since then.
Yeah.
Is it difficult navigating your personal relationship and your work relationship in theater?
No, it's not. We get along extremely well. Okay. We really like being around each other. Like marriage aside, we just we're great friends, and I think he is an incredibly intelligent person, and he really works from his brain first, and then he also has this great emotional background to back it up. But I tend to go emotion first. Sure. And we found that works really well. Okay. Because I can sort of say, well, okay, she's feeling, or in any script we do, she's feeling like this, and he'll say, okay, but look at the words. And we kind of remind each other of both those sides, which I think works really well. Yeah. Yeah, and it's different, of course, in a play like this. We're acting together, so we're on the same playing field. Yeah. We've done a few short films together where he's directing, and that's a very different dynamic because I'll be acting and he's directing. And for the most part, it goes well. Once in a while, we need to, as any director or artist pair, you need to go back and recalibrate your vocabulary if it's not working. But no, for the most part, it's pretty smooth. Smooth.
But as when you're acting together, it's super like you. Does the vocabulary break down when you're acting together? Or has it only really happened when he's been the director?
Only when he's been the director, really. Right. I think when we're acting together, because we're not having to ask, why'd you make that choice? That's just not how we would work. You have the director there to facilitate that. Yes, and we're not too punchy with each other in that way. We kind of leave each other to our own devices. That's good. Yeah.
What's the best part about working with your partner?
I think two things. One, the practicality of it is excellent. We get to spend all this time together. We're living together, working together. It simplifies our lives in this really great way. And at the same time, we're just doing acting work. And as actors, we have Joe jobs and other things that we do. So this being our whole world is a really special, easy thing for our household. Right. And then on top of that, it's incredibly easy to access those emotions when you're looking at the person you're in love with. True. Yeah. And putting yourself in that situation. I mean, every time we go back to Mary's wedding, we can't really get through it that first read because it's very close to home. Oh, yeah. But I think that there's some really beautiful work that comes out of that. So, Yeah. Nice.
Going back to Mary's wedding for a second. Now that you are not producing it.
Yes.
And now you get to concentrate on just the acting. Is there anything that you miss about the producing aspect of it?
I guess. I don't think so. I don't actually think so. I think with this one in particular, especially because Mary, they both, it really is a two-hander, but Mary talks a lot and is narrating. And I think, honestly, for this role, it is best that I have the one job. And I like that other people who are producing and directing and all that can get excited about it on their own without me, and then come and tell us what they've come up with. I really love that. And people who are frankly just better at it than me.
Yeah.
You know, like they're better at all those things than I'm better at acting than them, but they're better at, except for Kent, our director, who's also an actor. But like the producers, like I'm probably a better actor, but they're definitely better producers.
Is there any aspect of the producing that you do miss, or are you just like happy to be like, nope, done? I
like the puzzles of finding groups of people to come to the show. Kind of, who do we want to access? Who would love to see this show? I don't have the time to be trying to, like, I certainly will use social media and get the word out there. But our producers are accessing veterans groups and schools and all that. And I find the puzzle of that really interesting. Who do we want to see the show? How do we get them there? Where will they hear about it? What aspect of the show is what will attract them to this? You know, all those little puzzles I find really interesting. But I just think simultaneously, and I have so much respect for the people who do both. You know, Ruth Goodwin, who works with who's part of the Howland Company, and her and I got together to talk about Mary's Wedding going into it. And she's a force. Like, we have these great people in the city who can do both. I just don't know if I'm one of them.
I just like to access them as much as possible, and it is one of the things that I've been learning is that, and it was Jackie Thomas who reminded me that she says the secret that nobody tells you is that people want to help you. All you have to do is ask. And I've never asked somebody and had them say no.
That's the thing. That's a very good point.
Yeah,
I like that.
And so, like, there are people that I'm happy to be like, listen, can I pick your brain on this?
Yeah.
And a couple of people that I was like, when I was doing a press release for my Fringe show, and I was like, I don't even know how to do a press release. I think this will do. And I asked them, will you look this over? And they always said yes.
And they're happy to.
Yeah.
Yeah, we actually had that with a grant for this, where a friend of ours who does grants, I was talking about the process of the group doing the grants, and he was like, I'll look over it. I do that for a living basically now. I was like, but you could get paid for it, and we're not going to pay you. He was like, let me just look over it. And wrote back this amazing feedback. Like, he was totally happy, and it probably took him an hour, you know? Yeah.
It's great that they're, I think because passionate people like to talk about and like to get into what they're passionate about. And so, like, if they're passionate about marketing or grant writing, they like to share that because we're all better when we all share.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, at any point when you have been, like, what was the first thing that you self-produced? Was it Mary's Wedding, or was it?
Yeah. I helped out. Fraser wrote a play called Vacant a few years ago, and I like semi-produced that with him. He produced it mainly, and so I helped out with that. But but the Mary's Wedding in Essex was the first, or Woodsley, I should say. It was the first one. Yeah.
And was it difficult to decide to produce? Like, did you have any doubt about that?
No, I think we wanted to put it on, and we didn't know how else to do it. And we thought it was it's such a beautiful play. Like, the poetry of this play is amazing. And we had a few friends who were also interested, and we're like, well, let's just do it. I mean, it didn't seem as big a deal beforehand, and it was a big deal doing it, but we're so happy we did it, and it all came together so well. And as you say, everybody wanted to help. Like, our families, our friends, everybody helped so much. Yeah.
I always find that, like, to me, I think the first time I wanted to self-produce, I wasn't afraid because I didn't know.
Yeah, you just don't know what you're getting yourself into.
Yeah. I think the second time I was going to self-produce, I was like, what the
Well, and now I haven't self-produced.
Now I know what I'm doing.
I think I'm probably in the same boat. I'm like, okay, I'll do this, but we're going to need some help.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, is when you do it the first time, you don't know
how much help you need. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But I look at there are people who do self-producing really well, like Kat Sandler and Tom McGee and Danny Padgett. Those three are just like this triumvirate of awesome.
Absolutely.
And they're very good at what they do.
Yeah. And like some of the most energetic people I know.
Yeah.
You know, like just that like in the more positive sense of the word, relentless, you know, and prolific.
Yeah.
Very impressive. Do you like self-producing now?
I do, actually.
You do. Do you prefer it? Would you prefer it, do you think?
Well, here's the thing. I have found over the years as I've gotten older, I've recently found that I'm more interested in performing stuff that I create.
Yeah.
Whether I am writing it or whether I've been involved in the creation of it, that's what I'm more interested in performing and presenting. And that often means producing.
Yeah.
And so I think I'm more comfortable with it than I was several years ago. But every time I start, there's a moment of like, how am I going to do this
again? Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's one of those things that if you're going to do it, you just have to just do it.
You just have to do it. And you really have to commit everything to it. I mean, we're not producing this time, but one thing I'm so excited for with Mary's Wedding is that we have had all this time, all this anticipation. And right now, like right around last week, it's becoming this reality looming in the distance. Yeah. But it's so like, I'm so energized because you just have to do it, you know, and that kind of work, that'll force you to sit down and really work. And it's such a satisfying thing.
Yeah.
To have that set and ahead of you. And it's, you know, self-producing and getting that, just do it. Yeah. You just got to do it. Yeah. You know, there's something quite focusing about that, which I love.
How did this version of Mary's Wedding come about? Did you approach Crows? Did they approach you? How did this happen?
Well, it's interesting. It's sort of this funny mishmash. So my mother's a film producer and she loves theater. And recently one of her films, Prom Queen, has been turned into a musical with her producing.
I've heard of that.
Yeah. It's fabulous. And so she's kind of dipping her toe in the theater waters. And she had seen Mary's Wedding in Woodsley, and we'd always wanted to do it again because we were far away. We didn't get a lot of friends out there. It was magic because in Woodsley, we got mostly farmers. Right. And we had a lot of people who had never seen theater, which was very exciting that they came. But we really wanted to show people this show. And so she became determined to produce it. And then she got to know Derek Chua through Prom Queen, got Derek Chua on board. And then a man who we know as friends, my mom's worked with him, I've worked with him, Frey's worked with him, Kent Staines, happened to direct a production of Mary's Wedding at the Globe in Regina. And Stephen Massacati saw it, and it was one of his favorite productions. And so we asked Kent to direct it. And it all just sort of came together. And then we were looking for a space and we approached Crows and they were full. And then somebody dropped out and they were like, come on in. So
that's a wonderfully serendipitous.
Oh yeah. Everybody's sort of coming together, and Mary's Wedding's never been done professionally in Toronto.
Oh, really?
It had a fringe show once years ago, but that was it. So, and it's been done everywhere, but Stephen really, from what I hear, really wanted it to be a specific team when he gave his blessing. And when he kind of saw all the people who had attached themselves, he said, all right, this is exactly what I envisioned for Toronto. So
nice.
Yeah, it just all came together in this beautiful way.
Nice.
Yeah.
Is there something that you're most looking forward to about this presentation, like bringing it here? What do you want people to take from it? What are you most looking forward to doing with it?
I think we have an amazing team. The set that is being put together is very different from what we did back then. So I'm excited to play with that, see what comes from it. As I keep saying, Frey and I are 6 years older. I think that'll bring a seriousness to the text that I hope will be evocative. And it's the anniversary of the war, and I think important we all remember this. We're in a very strange political time in our country. I think anything we can do to remember these things that have happened in the past and make sure we're not moving in that direction is good.
Yeah.
I'm just looking forward to all these people who have heard of it and never actually seen it.
Yes.
Seeing it. Because people all say, oh, Mary's Wedding. Oh, I know Mary's Wedding. Oh, yeah, Mary's Wedding. But not that many people in the city, I find, have actually seen it. And it's really a beautiful story. I think it has something for everyone.
Nice.
Whether it's your grandparent was in a war and you've grown up hearing about it, or a first love, or, you know, family, or a love of, like, there's a big horse theme, the love of horses. And
Wow.
Yeah.
Nice.
I think people will enjoy it.
Awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Kate. It's been awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, this has been great. Thanks, Phil.
This has been a Homebody Productions production.